Is my husband an alcoholic? I used to ask myself that question a lot. And then I realized that I was doing it all wrong and I was asking the wrong questions. So for today's episode, we are going to ask the good questions and the questions that you should be asking right now.
Welcome to the Blessed Recovery Live. My name is Juan Carlos, and I am a recovering addict and alcoholic. And this is my wife, Paula, and she is a codependent. Why? Because she had to put up with me and my drinking. But, this is a place where we came to share our experience, strength, and hope, and how God, through the power of Jesus Christ and His grace and mercy, and through the 12 steps of recovery, inner healing, and deliverance, we were able to or I was able to get out of my addictions and my alcoholism and a lot of things that I was doing, and how my wife was able to also be able to overcome the toxic codependency that happens when someone has a problem with addictions and alcohol. And this episode is really important because we're going to talk about her side of the story and what was going through her mind and what was happening when all of this started. Because believe it or not, when we first got married, when we got married, at the beginning of our marriage, I was not drinking. I was sober. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, my love.
Stop it.
I talk to him like that.
That's
now.
Not true.
It's my living amends.
That is not true. That is not true. This is a program of honesty. We started wrong already.
Okay, so I hope that you can laugh a little bit with us. I know probably right now you might not feel, your world might feel a little shattered. I don't know what prompted you to click on this video, but God put it in my heart to just share the things, the misconceptions about our situations, especially early on when I didn't know what was going on in my house. I didn't even see the disease. I didn't even have a name for it. So is my husband an alcoholic? That was a question that I had a lot. Does he really fit into the characteristics? And then fast forward to, maybe even like a year into my 12-step recovery program for codependency, I began to realize, man, I had this all backwards. Like I had literally inverted backwards. I should have been asking, another question, does his drinking bother me? That is a question.
That's a good one.
That I should have been asking. I could give you a list of all the characteristics. I mean, I could do that right now. I could list all the characteristics of an alcoholic. They lie, they cheat, they steal. I mean, what else is there? That would be a very short video.
We're a bag full of surprises. Well, but let's be clear. That's when we are in our disease.
In the disease.
Alcoholism is a disease. Drug addiction is a disease. And again, we have other videos where we explain this a little bit more. And the best way to know this is for you to attend a 12-step meeting recovery. But yeah, all these characteristics of lying, cheating, stealing, destroying, manipulating, pridefulness, all of that stuff happens a lot, or happens mostly when we are drinking or inactive alcoholism, how we call it, right?
Right. And I think it's really hard early on because you're trying to understand darkness. You're trying to understand the cunning, baffling disease of addiction. And it's like you're looking into, a black hole. There's nothing to understand there. It's darkness. We were called to be light. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you are called to be the light. Light overcomes darkness. It's not, they should be trying to understand us. We should be living a life full of light and emanating blessing and not cursing and causing other people to wonder what is up with her. And so what's interesting is that I listed all of those things, and even if you checkbox all those things, and even if you watch 20 videos on understanding what character traits or what constitutes an alcoholic, it's still not going to make you happy. It's still not going to bring you breakthrough. It's not going to do anything for you to figure it out. What is going to help you is understand what happened, what is happening to you right now. Why am I so disturbed by somebody else's drinking? What happened? You know, what happened to the peace? What happened to me? I think I want to share how I kind of started processing all of the denial, because I think for us, we go through a lot of the whole process of denial. And if you haven't tuned into this podcast, we did an episode on our therapist, and our therapist actually fired us. You know, it's a funny episode, a true story. All of this is a true story, but I walked away from there. She told me, go to a 12-step codependency meeting, and you go get a sponsor, and you go to a 12-step recovery meeting.
I mean, I was offended because when we were there, yes, I was at that point. So at the beginning of our marriage, I was not drinking, like nothing. And I have been sober for a while. I think I probably drank one or twice, but I've been sober for a while on my own, you know, that's another story. But this is probably like 2 years into our marriage, maybe. Yeah.
One.
No, like 2. Like when we went through a therapist, I think it was 2 years.
No, it was 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we go there, and again, I was using the white powder. I was drinking, but I still never in my life did it cross me that I was an alcoholic, because like you said, there was a misconception. And I could think, it was like, if she would only be okay with this, we could actually have a lot of fun. You know, she could actually come and drink with me, and we can party, we can do stuff, right? And this would be great. That's the way I think. And you'll get into this more, but at the beginning was every now and then, right? And it was kind of bad, and then it goes into where we ended up with this lady, right?
Yeah. So she kind of diagnosed us, I guess, and I didn't really think she was right. It didn't make sense to me. I thought the issue with him was that he just kept sabotaging his life. I just thought that he didn't know like when to calm down at parties, that he wanted to stay on highs and lows. And I just think I thought he just needed to stay on medication. Like, I was really happy when he was on Cymbalta because he was.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked him kind of, toned down. That's all he needed. And if he could just stay like that, I would, but I knew that he was not himself. And so we were at a breaking point at that point, and I needed to.
But I'll correct this. This was 2 years into it.
2
And
years.
I'll say why, because it not that I want to be right, which I am. No, because of at the time, because I think it's important how it was progressive. Like what you mentioned. Well, maybe it was just this, maybe it was just that, until the point that I was gone for a week. So that didn't happen within a year. It took
a little bit.
It took
yeah.
time, and the reason we want to mention, we were talking, this is right before we started recording, because some people might be going through the beginning phases of this,
and you're
you
not
might,
sure.
Yeah, I was, well, it's not too bad. It gets really bad.
It's progressive, and we'll talk about the nature of the disease here shortly. But yeah, I that's what the therapist diagnosed us, and so we went to our separate 12-step recovery meetings, and it was at that meeting that I heard my story. I didn't hear about him. I heard my part. I heard what was going on in my house, and I was like, holy cow, they're reading my diary. And that is kind of when I realized that I belonged, that I had found my people, I seriously thought that I was the only person going through this. So I didn't really have, and of course I come from a little bit of dysfunction in my family. And so even then, like, I didn't grow up around like low bottom addict or alcoholics. I grew up just with everybody drinking every day, right? But like, that was normal. So I didn't see his behavior as anything abnormal. Yeah. So when I got to my first meeting, that is when the denial began to break off and I started to see the similarities in my life and how I was reacting, I could really identify with some of the funny story. I mean, funny now. At the time, I mean, I was up late at night reading bills, phone bill records, and trying to figure out like who was his dealer. That was my thing. So all those stories seem so funny now, but at the time they were not. And it was at that meeting that I figured out that, man, I've been trying to control somebody else's life. I figured out the definition of codependency. Like, I didn't know that what I was experiencing had a name. And codependency, really what that boils down to is I'm not happy unless you're happy. And so you have made an idol out of somebody else's life. My life revolved around one person. And that was exhausting, honestly. I heard all the people who were talking about being controlling, manipulative, and they were like openly admitting this out loud. I like would never even admit that stuff out loud. And I say it like it's no big deal and we laugh about it and we joke, but it was such a confounding moment for me to be able to like freely express myself and laugh at myself like, oh my gosh, I do that too.
Well, also it brought awareness because probably you were not even aware.
I was not. I had no idea people were going through this. I didn't know that I was asking the wrong questions. Like, does this drinking bother you? Then you belong here. That's it. That was the whole, do you consider yourself a codependent? Like, yeah, I definitely belong there. So I start going to these meetings. And at my first meeting, they told me, oh, yeah, we go like 3 times a week. And I was like, what? Who has time for that? Like, I have to manage my husband. I have things to do. We're very busy people. Things started getting progressively worse at my home. There were more fights happening. I found a lot of relief from even going to like my first 2-3 meetings. I went once a week for like 6 weeks.
Why did you find relief? What going to these meetings? What? Because the change was very quick.
It was.
I kept drinking. Even though I was going to meetings, I kept drinking. But the change on your side was very quick. And what clicked with you in those? Why?
I think it was being able to relate with just breaking the isolation, knowing that there were other people who were going through the same thing that I was going through and that they could laugh about it. There was so much hope in that. And then they would tell stories about how they would do this tool that they learned and that something turned out great. And I'd be like, wow, like I'm going to try that at home. I'm going to try keeping my mouth shut. And things did work out like really quickly. Things got better at my house, not because he changed, but because I changed. And that's kind of like where I started seeing that, oh my goodness, everything's different. If I can, and they would say this at the meeting too, it only takes one person to change the entire family dynamic.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's like really hopeful.
So what bothered you about my drinking? Why was it a problem? I always thought, well, we just can hang out. Like, I mean, I don't think I was like a bad drunk at parties. I would just get loud and goofy, but I was not doing stupid things, right?
You just changed. You just were not the same person. And I didn't like it when you couldn't stop. And I felt like you were completely unaware of the people around you, like how you looked. It made me look a certain way. I didn't want to look a certain way.
Yeah, and I think that is the progressive part, because maybe at the beginning I was able maybe to go to sleep, right? And then in my case, I was not only drinking but using the white powder thing. That will keep you going for days, right? And that's why I couldn't turn it off, because it was not just the alcohol. Most likely, most people who only do alcohol, for example, you might pass out or something, right? But then it would go days, and that's a progressive part. That didn't happen overnight.
And it wasn't even, when I think about like the progressiveness of the disease, like it wasn't even that bad earlier on. So that's why I'm like, I don't know why. It's hard for me to answer that, because you got way worse. Like it was very evident that you were an alcoholic, but I was already in the program years.
Yeah.
So earlier on, it was just like, I guess I just had these expectations for my life, and you weren't going along with me.
With
like
the plan.
You weren't going along with the plan, the
Yeah.
script. It was supposed to look like this. We had fights all the time. We couldn't communicate. There was just something.
Well, what happens is that this disease will eat you alive. I remember one guy at a meeting said, alcoholism or alcohol is going after your soul. Please go and watch other episodes where we explain why am I an alcoholic, how I discovered that. But what happened is that my soul was being consumed literally by the devil through alcohol and through the addiction, and you through your codependency. So it was like our souls were being torn apart, and we couldn't communicate. We couldn't fulfill what God had created us to be. So you start drifting apart, and again, this disease gets worse every day. And like you mentioned, I became someone else. I could feel it. There's always that little boy inside of you that lives inside of me, and that boy knew that I was not that person anymore.
Yeah.
I was so corrupted and perverted and wicked. It's horrible. So I can only imagine. I remember you would say so many times that you knew I was going to drink before I would drink because of the look in my eyes.
Yeah, no, we learn the cycles around their lives. And what I wanted to, as you were saying that, it reminded me that I think earlier on it was harder for me to diagnose what was going on, because what was happening was that you weren't drinking early on. When I met him, he was not drinking, but you were irritable, restless, and discontent. You were dry drunk.
Yeah.
You didn't have a program. And so and then you started drinking, which I didn't think, I was like, whatever. I thought that you just had a problem like with abusing drugs in the past, which is what you told me.
I mean, that was true.
That was the disclaimer.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what that meant. Like, I didn't grow up around that, And so I didn't understand the nature of the disease. And so I couldn't recognize what was happening. And it was really hard because it was barely starting. And so it was like the progressiveness of the disease later on in my program, which thank God that I landed in 12-step recovery meetings, was that I had something to hold on to, and I knew what it was going to, I was prepared. Basically, God equipped me.
You mentioned that you laugh now. So what happened at that meeting? What happened when you went there?
Yeah, so my first meeting was amazing. Like, for the first time, I realized that I had brought my own baggage into this marriage, that I had sought out an addict because I myself had gone through the early stages of what codependency, how you cultivate this codependency, that I can't be okay without somebody else being okay with me, and controlling them. And, they would laugh about how they manipulated somebody, but now, they applied a tool of the program and now they're happy, and, just success stories, and really faith sharing and sharing about testimonies of how the program would work for their life, and just applying new tools. And I was like, wow, there's so much like hope. And I remember walking away. I took so many notes. I was a very good first timer. I took a lot of really good notes. I still have that journal. And I came home and I just knew that this could work. This was the thing that could work. And I know that not everybody's first time going to a meeting like that is like that, but I found a meeting across town because I was so embarrassed. I didn't want anybody in my immediate community to like know that I was going to one of these loser meetings, because I felt like and now here we are, like sharing it out loud with everybody. Yeah. But it was a strong meeting, and when I say that, it meant that there was sponsorship, there was laughter. That was so confusing to me. People were laughing. It was very different, and I walked away with so much hope, and that is how it should be for everybody. I identified immediately.
So what are the questions that you finally started asking besides, you mentioned, oh, is he an alcoholic? Is he this? But then they corrected you in a way and said, no, does his drinking bother you?
Yeah.
Right? But how did you start working on yourself or realizing that yes, even though it was my drinking that was bothering you, but this had a lot to do with you as well.
Yeah. So that was like the big turnaround at the meetings because I went there for him, but I found myself.
That's good.
And I didn't know that I had grown up in so much dysfunction. To me, it was normal. And I didn't know that that had a name. I didn't know all the dysfunction that was going on. So I found out that if I could change myself and that if I could work on myself, that a lot of things around my life could change. And I would hear a lot of people talk about, like, you know, if it only takes one person to change the entire family dynamic. I really hung on to that. And then they would say things like, you can be happy whether the alcoholic is drinking or not. And I was like, really? And there were tons of testimonies. This was a big meeting. So they would say stuff like that. So when the turnaround happened and I started working the program the way they said to do it, that's when everything changed. I realized that I had brought in, like I said, so much baggage, and I had found you strategically. You know, I'm a smart girl. You know, I did all these things right. I grew up very, you know, very timid young girl, but I was very accomplished. I did a lot of good things. I had a, you know, have a career, and somehow, like, I still ended up with these losers in this room. So, but it worked out.
Did you just call me a loser?
Yes.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah. No, but it's true, man. We attract each other, and yeah, when you are in the way I see this, when we are in our disease of alcoholism, we step so away from who God created us to be, and we become losers, like literally, like not in the worldly way to say it, but we lose it all, right? And I remember blaming you for my drinking, and I remember telling you are the cause of this, and you know, we have other episodes about resentment and how we justify our drinking with this, but I remember, I would never forget this. You say one person to change, right? One person can bring the whole change or the changing the whole
family,
dynamic.
yeah.
And she got sober because also they get sober from their codependency, right?
You get a sound mind.
A sound mind, right? And but I kept drinking, and for me it was the coolest thing because she actually started working her program. So she stopped nagging me, she stopped chasing me, she stopped looking at my bills on my phone, whatnot. So like, dude, this is the greatest thing ever, right? So I kept going to AA into my 12-step program, but I was lying. I was
You were
not,
still drinking.
I was still drinking at the
but
beginning.
at least you were hiding it now.
Yeah, I was not doing it in front of because I didn't want to get in trouble, not for the reason. But I remember one morning I had been awake for like 3 days, and I used to hide in this room, and I was snorting and drinking and just miserable. I wanted to die, and I remember hearing laughter at like 6:30 in the morning or something like that, and I was like, "Who did?" You know, what's going on? And I walk out of the room and I see you in that little dining area that we used to have, and you were talking to your sponsor, and you had your big book open and your Bible open, and you were just laughing. And that was the first time that it hit me. That was, man, I'm gonna lose it all. Because I realized, because codependency goes both ways as well. You know, like, yeah, it's a typical like, yeah, hit me but don't leave me or something like that, right? Or I don't care as long as you don't leave me, abuse me but don't leave me, that kind of thing. And I, for the first time in my conscience, like in the depths of me, I was like, this is it, right? And we have a saying, it's called attraction, not promotion. And in a way, her sobriety or her recovery attracted me because I did get sober one time for almost a year or so, and then I relapsed, and then by the grace of God, been sober for a while now. But you know, that was a crucial moment for me because you changed, and that brought conviction to me, and I brought fear in a good way, right? And so in a way, your recovery helped me to
Yeah.
get sober.
Yeah, I just started working my program. What does that mean? It means that I just start living differently. And I thought it was too much at first. At my first meeting, they said, like, come to 3 meetings a week. We all go to the same ones. And, you do this and you do that and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that is too much. I got things to do. Okay. I got an alcoholic at
I have a
home.
life.
I got to keep watch on him. Okay. But it was funny because I started getting cameras in the house at that time. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can go, because they invited me. So these ladies invited me to go to Oklahoma for a conference thing. And it was such an experience. It was the first time that I was going to leave my alcoholic husband at home to his own devices. And I was so nervous going because you were still pretending that you weren't drinking.
Yeah, we think
But
we're fooling people. We think we're fooling, but we don't fool people.
I really did think that you were still sober and you were still trying your best. And so I was completely and utterly shattered after, it was in like this valley, Oklahoma. It's where they host that big conference. Some of y'all might know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so we were in this deep, deep, dark valley, canyon.
The valley of the shadow of death.
Canyon. And I was hiding down there. We had 0 reception, so I couldn't check the phone for my cameras to see how he was doing. So me and a girl, Vanessa, she was early recovery too, and we started, we would go hide in the car and drive up the canyon to get reception. Do you know this story? I don't think I've ever told you.
No, I think I know this.
So her and I would check in and see if we could get text messages or whatever. And so anyway, I got caught by my sponsor, and she tore into me like, aren't you supposed to be doing this and that and that? What are you doing? You're out here, he's out, leave him alone. And so it was funny, but I forgot what I was going with this.
No, but I'll tell you
I
something.
just started living different.
Yeah, because that's the craziness that y'all live in, like the control. And even though you don't like what we're doing, you want to know what we're doing, and you want to, she was looking into cameras. She was calling my dealer. She was doing, I don't know if I should say that, but she was, maybe not. She was looking for cameras, looking into bank accounts, phones, whatnot.
Everything.
And that's the insanity that they live in, because we make things miserable without drinking. But I'll tell you what, the same thing that I felt on that, when you were in that little, in the morning praying and talking to your sponsor, when she started living differently, I felt that void of, okay, when I was little, like my mom was mostly like the one that would.
The nurturer?
No, the reprimander.
Oh, the reprimander.
More, and she was a nurturer, of course, but she was a little more like that. My dad was working, and he would come, but he's a more serene person. But when my dad would get upset with me, he would never raise his voice. He would never, he would just look at me. You could see the face of disappointment. He would just leave me alone. And boy, did I hated that, because I would just feel like the absence of my father, right? And this time I felt something very different. I mean, not like the father, but the absence of you, but also the absence of God, because God had brought you to my life, and we have this marriage and a ministry, and just the absence of everything leaving, it was not even the chaos, but that absence. And it was because you started changing, right? So in my case, that helped. It might not help everybody, right? But in my case, it was a pivotal moment because you started working your program.
Yeah.
Right? So what kind of, because this is an episode just to get people into it, right? So what kind of hope can you give people who are questioning these things that might be relating to you right now about what they're doing, what they have thought of doing, what they're not doing? What's that kind of hope that you can give to them?
So the first 30 days were very important. I didn't think that I needed to be going to 3 meetings a week. I thought that was too much, like I said earlier. But what has to happen in those, and why those first, and like for alcoholics too, they do 90 meetings in 90 days.
Yep.
For us, I think the first 30 days are the most important, because we've been living a whole lifetime, a whole life, where we've created all these codependent behaviors, habits, things. We're like in this loop, and we can't get out of it. The insanity. And so you have to break it. And the fastest way to break it is by filling up your head with as much recovery as possible.
Oh, that's good.
So whenever I talked to my sponsor for 30 days. I read. It was very important for me to read. I read the books that they told me to read every day. I actually began in my personal faith journey. I dove back in, because I was Christian, but I thought that God was like punishing me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that God was angry at me because because I chose the wrong person to marry, and like that weighed on me for so long. And I was like, God is done with me. I really thought God was done with me. So I decided to get back into the Word of God. I actually did a consecration, a 30-day consecration, and I began to go on a journey. I actually received, I believe in that time of consecration, I believe I received the Holy Spirit, because I had a hunger that I had never had for Scripture before in my life. So when I began to declare the word, I didn't know I was doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, but like God led me, like the Holy Spirit. That's what is. Yes, it was revealed to me. So after that, I continue to live that way of life. It is a design for living that works. It still works for me. And I still go to meetings. I still do all the things. And slowly you start building your spiritual foundation, your spiritual house. You get your house in, or you get your clarity of mind begins to come. And I had to make the decision at some point, and I couldn't leave my marriage. I really believe that God hates divorce, and I had to try my best at staying married. So I couldn't make a decision until I had enough clarity, mental clarity, sound mind, to do that. And it took working the steps, and I did get my answer. And I was going to leave you.
I know.
I was going to leave you. Yeah. And, I sold my house. I slowly started getting rid of things. I was organizing my life. We separated, finances, because, he would go on 3-day benders, that kind of thing. And I would, have to freeze accounts and stuff. So slowly I had to get to that point. And then all of a sudden he gets sober. He ruined my plans. He ruined my plans. And I had to basically start over. Sobriety was a totally different ball game. I had to really buckle down on my program of recovery again.
And I think another two things that I did as well. I did in my own recovery, but you did as well, and I think they worked great. Was breaking isolation and getting a sponsor, getting accountable, getting someone that will hold you accountable. Right.
I would never, like, the people in my life, the women in recovery, man, they loved on me.
Yeah. And that love is the love of God. I remember people saying the reason we drink is because we're looking for love in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason for the codependency too, and trying to, and God shows up, like Jesus Christ shows up at these meetings, believe it or not. And it's thanks to these meetings that we have now a beautiful, wonderful church, and we have our faith has grown, our marriage has been saved. Because even though 12-step meetings are not a religious program, but we know who God is. We know who Jesus. Well, you probably cannot see it on the cutting, but it says Jesus Christ is King, and He's the one through the Holy Spirit that gave us all this grace, and so don't give up on you. I would say on you. I have learned a lot of this side of the codependency, because I was offended, like we said, I was offended. I blamed you for everything. And, that's the way of life we had. You blame me for everything. And it's just like a chaos, continuing chaos. So once we start taking care of ourselves, but once we start taking care of ourselves, things change tremendously. So, thank you for sharing all this.
I know I got unexpectedly emotional.
That's good.
Remembered some of the ladies who would come and give me hugs, and I was like a really crusty person, and I was like resentful that I even had to go to these meetings,
Crusty person.
And they would hug me like,
I'm sorry, I could have stopped thinking about Krusty the Clown. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's a meme
No,
waiting
but
to
even
happen.
you want to know something funny? Like now, I am friends with these ladies.
He hated my friends.
Oh, dude!
There was some lady he was like, I don't like her. She's evil. And what is she telling you?
Because it's all about us, of course, right? Like it's all about me and myself. So I was like, you're talking about me. You're conspiring behind my back. And probably they were, but maybe not.
Totally.
But no, this thing's worked. So expect a miracle.
Expect a miracle. You don't know what's on the other side until you do something different. Do something different. Whatever got you to this video, whatever got you to right now, the insanity that we talk about of doing the same things over and over, expecting a different result, it's not working. Try something different. So challenge you to continue on this journey. I have a welcome guide in the description below that kind of walks you through the framework of how I work a program of recovery. And there's a lot of digital products here, book recommendations that you might find useful. And like, if I had to do this all over again with everything that I know now, and I was just at the beginning of trying to figure out if my husband was an alcoholic or an addict, does he identify with that? I would check myself into like a 30-day program. I mean, obviously codependents don't go to rehab like, addicts and stuff. We don't have that physical allergy, but we do have that addictive mindset. We have a lot of mind things that we have to work on and get deliverance from. So I would dive into a 30-day program.
You know what also I would dive into?
What?
Our new book. Our new book is coming out.
Yes, hopefully by the time that you see this video, you'll see a book there.
So we are working on publishing our book, and it's your book and my book. It's two different books. Of course, mine is targeted to alcoholics and addicts. Yours is targeted to codependents. But basically, we tell our story, and within our story, we include what we did through the 12 steps, through our Christian faith, through deliverance, through inner healing, how we put all those things together to be sober and to stay sober, what we're doing now to keep our sobriety going, and kind of like yours is more like a workbook type of thing. Mine is a little more testimonial, I guess, and our pastor approved, so we're good. We're good. So please stay tuned for this. Hopefully, maybe when this comes out, it might be out. We don't know. So get ready.
Stay tuned. God bless you for coming by. We want to partner with you with prayer. So if you would comment below your prayer request, you want to drop down, a name or something, we will pray for you by name. Also, we can walk you through inner healing and deliverance as well. So check us out. All our details are in the description below.
God bless you all.